Hello, welcome back to Florida Relocation Weekly. Today we're in episode number 5. My name is Adam Hancock and I am the founder of Sunshine State Company Real Estate. In this episode, I wanted to dive into a really interesting thought exercise. When relocating to the state of Florida, how much does it matter how close you are to the beach and just general coastal proximity? In this conversation, I want to look at a few things. Amongst them, the evolution of inland affordable retirement. I also want to explore how an incoming buyer, potentially like you watching this video today, can navigate this terrain. It's tricky, it's convoluted, how to make it easier, and then even equip yourself more in general just to make yourself more powerful as a buyer in this weird market. And then I want to look at state to state. Is it that relevant anymore of just Florida versus Texas, like this old school argument of migrating south? Or are people these days stopping before they get to Florida versus Florida, the Carolinas, Georgia, and beyond? So I hope you enjoy this. And if you do, and you like any of our content, if you have not already joined my new 30-day report, the first one comes out on June 30th. So it should be just a couple days after, I believe, this episode I'm going to post. That's the best thing you can do. The link is in the description box below. We'll have other links. It's completely free sign up. And it's no spam. It's one email a month. And it's basically everything I got going on. It's market trends I'm exploring, things I'm pondering, new construction incentives that we have available, quick move-in homes for new construction, builders that we're privy to, different little free reports and all kinds of different things. We jam it all in this one email, and it's the best thing you can do on the back of these kind of videos. So please check that out before you head out. And without further ado, let's hop in. All right, let's start off with a little bit of context before we develop these points further. So the reason I thought of this idea was because what I generally experience is people come down to the state of Florida. They're obviously from different areas and backgrounds and experiences and so on. And because of the pure diversity geography of it all, this becomes a game of perspective. Are you 3 hours from the coast now? And if so, does 45 minutes satiate that need for you? Does that fix things? Are you nowhere near it? And your plan was to change that in your golden years. And who even decides how close is the beach? You know, every other person you ask would have a different answer. And in my experience, this becomes like you have this in your head and you want to get to here. And how painful was it to do it? How long did it take? And more importantly, how different was this than this actually happened? And can you live with that, you know? And so that's my goal, is I think that this can be a little simpler, a little easier, and hopefully just at the very least a little smarter. Because these things they're not in a vacuum, they're not in a silo. You know, the predecessor buyers before someone watching this, if you have not already relocated, you know, have gone through heartburns in the last 5-6 years that potentially should alleviate some of those for you. And I've seen people make some pretty gross sacrifices on criteria they really, really wanted for their house, their neighborhood, the particular part of the city they wanted to live in, to try to solve this problem of this dream in their head about the functionality of that day-to-day lifestyle of like, you know, does this mean walkable to the beach? Are you going to go to the beach 2 to 3 times a week? What's that day-to-day going to be? And not like people have underestimated the consideration of what that entails, but maybe haven't experienced it. Like barrier islands, bridges, like how close is close versus it not matter? Like those are 2-3 miles, it won't matter. Like it's not going to feel that different. And what you can afford yourself in what you could get for your money and just that day-to-day lifestyle where things are evolving by taking the precise steps in order and thinking about things, I think, differently or the right way, in my opinion. I found that it really, really helps folks. And this doesn't not have to be a super unpleasant, painful thing. I think it's just a matter, that's why I said at the beginning, it's like an art form. I think relocation is something that needs to be looked at separately than just random real estate buying, because it's a pattern. There's rhythms to it all. So that's what I want to do here. I have some interesting points that I would like to, one, enlighten you that maybe you haven't considered, open your possible options that weren't available to you before. At the very least, I'd like you to feel a little better about what you've already planned on doing. And let's hop in. Point number 1, the progression of inland retirement, I'm calling it. This could relate to many buyer demographics as well, families, etc. But I will get into those intricacies in a few moments. I would like to start off with Sarasota, Florida as our spokesperson, our talking head for the Southwest Florida market. I think it's profound in its simplicity. And it's also easier in general to start here and look south to Naples after, north to Tampa after in juxtaposition. Sarasota, Florida is all about this one triangle. Downtown Sarasota, Florida, the main downtown thoroughfare, as inland, but it's very close to the water. And it's a little bit north in town as far as the city limits. It's also very close to two really popular beaches, Lido Beach and Siesta Key. Lido to the north, Siesta Key to the south, which are both barrier islands, which means there's a bay in between because you have to cross bridges. So, and they each both also have shopping districts on them, the beach villages, St. Armand Circle, Siesta Key Village. So in this little triangle, you have bay, downtown, multiple shopping, dining, and quartz white sand and variety and all this kind of thing, right? So of course, back in the day when this area was developed, everybody jammed in there. It's amazing geography. It looked amazing. It looked incredible on a map, even without all the development. And then over time, what happens in most of these areas is the rest of the development ripples by people trying to jam their way east to west, north to south, close to that area. And this kind of developed in a 7-ish mile range, especially east to west. And if you navigated that market right now as a buyer, then of course, because most of this is already built, this already existed. So you're in a resale market, you're going to be, what you see and what you have available to you is simply what someone else is offering up on that market. So you're going to have a limited view of what actually it involves. It could be older because of the history. It's just trickier, it's different. And for the typical relocation buyer, it's not ideal. It's just this one geography that everybody's trying to get to. So if you said, okay, with that being said, what exists over that imaginary 7-ish, and you could say 7 to 10 mile line? Well, it doesn't go from here to here. It goes from here to here. A world's different. I mean, just over that line, 9.5 miles, you have Lakewood Ranch, Florida. The oldest home in the entire community is built in 95. Most of it wasn't built when I was in high school. You have 40 plus communities, multiple downtowns. It is a thing. It is a city on its own out, right? Below that, a few miles in central Sarasota, parallel with Siesta Key, this thing, in 2040, you're going to have 15 neighbors that don't exist now. South Sarasota to the east is expanding on and on and on and on. And they've done multiple interesting things, that could be advantageous to a buyer. One is they know what this market is, right? So they've gone way out of their way to develop the idea of just simply master plan, which is intentionality, but also, do you need to run over to the down, what's the tug? Why is it a sacrifice, right? Why? Everything but the beach. If I put downtowns in here and we put cool coffee shops and farmers markets and, if we have kids and their friends are out there, the sports are out there, the schools are out there, you're in pickleball clubs and you're doing all these kind of things around people that are outside of your neighborhood in other neighborhoods that relate, that aren't in a vacuum, then what is the need of going over there? You know what I mean? And then also because the idea that everything we're talking about is jamming our way close to the coast and then everything else ripples from there. So because of that sensitivity, it's in perspective, but you got affordability for going east because it was a sacrifice to everybody. It's I went further, so I should get more. And this is also where the land was at. So, there's a lot of different benefits there. And this video is not about, I don't want to, get crazy here. But, if they have land and they can do 35, 40 neighborhoods in a 25-year span, then you have townhomes, villas, they're peacocking. There's criteria for almost everyone. Again, big ceiling of perspective here, so don't get mad at me. But it's almost everyone within a market of a home type, a home size, a home price, and what this community is positioned for. So if all of that's just over this line, then what you got to look at is you got to say, what is that difference? What is 5 miles versus 10? And what is actually available to you as a buyer? Because I think the actual difference in the distance between those two scenarios I just explained is a lot smaller than it may have appeared to you on the surface originally. Because if you don't live on the beach, which is a full-on commitment, it's a cool commitment, but it's a commitment nonetheless, and you're anywhere inland, even 3, 4, or 5 miles conservatively, which is close in essence, that's probably not a 3 to 4 minute commute. That's an actual 10 to 12 minute drive to the beach. I would say most people in that range are probably in the 15 to 17 minute area, one way to the coast. So if you're already 15 to 17 minutes, how much further is 22 to 35 minutes really? Because I can tell you what you're going to get for your house, your day-to-day neighborhood, the community of master plan environment that is available to you is way, way larger most likely than that day-to-day drive time commute is going to feel once you get used to kind of the traffic patterns and the difference in the more city-based street versus interstate system down here. And if you're at least open to that discussion, things get way more interesting. Okay, my second major point really runs right off the back of point number one, and that's just simply taking this idea a little bit further. If you're already cool with 10 miles, how much further is 15 or 17? You know, the simple fact of the matter is that the premise I just explained over the last few minutes isn't brand new concept. So because of that, for one reason or another, maybe it just doesn't work for you and your family. You know, it could have gotten so popular that it priced you in a place that you don't want to be. You know, potentially you want new construction, but some of these areas are really new construction now, and you don't want Pleasantville. Like, you want a little bit, but you don't need 50 communities around each other. Or maybe even you're a snowbird, partial year occupancy in the state of Florida, and you don't need all of that or want all that economically, investment-wise, house-wise, you know, whatever it may fit to you. Well, just like the coast created the value of a 10-mile eastern primary suburb, the primary suburb also creates a ripple value of a Plan B secondary suburb. And this is what a Parish, Florida would be to a Lakewood Ranch, for example. A North Fort Myers could be to like Bonita Springs or the western Estero, Florida area in the Naples market. Even the Wimauma, Ruskin, Sun City Center, Apollo Beach is to the southeastern Tampa Bay. It's a slight offshoot that inherently is always going to be a little further, but most likely should provide more affordability, less development, just something a little bit different. And the reason, so it's something I would totally consider because it's the same progression of thinking. So it's, if you understand where it's all at, where it's all going, what it will never be versus the other one, then it becomes more intentionality, not accidentally ending up in an area where you could have chose Plan A and you accidentally ended up in B. But the reason that I talk about evolution in the title of this section so much is because this is no longer random. It was just things were just getting pushed. Like, if you couldn't afford this, you went to this. Like, that was back in the day. But the last year, especially, new construction builders have put a very large focus on that opportunity of intentionally trying to build a different product in these areas than are in the other areas. And they understand how people view that area versus the others. It's an area 50 times. But what I mean by that is, like, you know, in that Parish market and that north of Lakewood Ranch market, you know, the reason I mentioned retirement is because what 55 and up is, you know, what Del Webb has done up there with the brand, what Culture is going to do, what the affordable, like, 55 and up product of Lennar has done within that in the Tampa Bay market. Waterset, 55 and up Toll Brothers, and a master plan area of Waterset up in the southeast Tampa market. You know, Del Webb and GL Valencia and Babcock Ranch are in lower Punta Gorda, North Fort Myers area. These guys are building these all-in-one communities. They're the crystal water lagoons of being like everything but the beach, and then they add their own beach of just being like, okay, if we're going to be out this far, if you're already, because they're having the same argument, you know? I just explained to you why you should be okay with saying what's 15 minutes to 25, 30. They're saying what is 28 to 30 to 40. It's just a trickle. You weren't cool with it, and then you were, and then you were a little bit more cool with it, and then you're like, well, if I'm already here, I might as well look at here. And what you can do, though, which is cool, is you can say, if all is equal, why would you ever choose Plan B if you could choose Plan A? In most cases, you shouldn't. Even if you could, you shouldn't. It's going to be always a different location that's never going to be close as the other one. And anything they add there, they're probably also in Plan A. But I've seen people save $200,000 on the same exact home in the same builder 8 miles apart. This is the difference between if you're moving with a family where 1,000 square feet, that's a material difference. You know, that could be 4 bedrooms with 4 en-suites versus an empty nester zoned house. This could be the difference between a pool spa, full screened-in lanai patio with a grill versus not at all. It's just a matter of what's important to you, how much does it matter versus the minds of the people. And I think that's the whole reason to even look at this kind of thing. Even if you don't choose like a junior version or an offshoot, if you're aware that you chose this, but this was over here, and then this was also over here, and then that bumps you in the middle, you're just a lot smarter as a buyer in general. So that's my point on that, if that made any sense. And let's hop to point number 3. All right, for point number 3, I'd like to do something a little different. And that is basically do a crash course speed round of how I would kind of take a client through not only this conversation, but the physical tour of trying to relocate based on some of these ideas. And I haven't done that, I don't think, in the past exactly like this, but also a lot of these kind of random points that I have and thoughts that I have, they're not that random. They're all just on the same progression of thinking of what I believe is valuable in the order that I would take to get there. So hopefully this connects some of the dots. So basically, let's pick a criteria to start with. Say you're in New Jersey, for example's sake. You want to be in Florida in about 12 months. You're looking at relocating. Because of that timeline, you are favoring new construction a bit. Liquidity control, logistics control of that. Trying to sell a house, land on that 12-month timeline. 2,200 to 3,100-ish square feet, and let's not pick a price. Let's say you're not really low, but you're not way too crazy high, nothing odd, and nothing too custom. And you are thinking Southwest Florida, but not quite sure in the exact city maybe. That's where we're starting. The first thing I would do is I would pick the major areas of the town, separate them in sections that you would somewhat work in this realm. So, and all of these, by the way, from my first point, are going to be kind of an offshoot of that idea of like there was a popular area, and all of these major sections are going to have locational value in different ways to that area. Now, big cities, you have choices, right? It's the eye of the beholder. Like a Tampa, you have the beach and the downtown are on different coasts. So there's different layers of that, but nonetheless, it's similar. So in Sarasota, this would be one direction to go is northeast of town. That's the Lakewood Ranch area as a barometer. One is to go central of town. That is right on the interstate, like Sky Ranch, like right east Sarasota area. And then one is to go south, Venice, Nokomis. Tampa Bay, Park, Pinellas County, and the beaches, because there's no real new construction suburbs over there. But you could say Hillsborough County and Pasco, the inland area. If you go west, you have West Chase, Citrus Park. You could even say like Northdale, Carrollwood, that area. If you go north, you have Wesley Chapel, Lutz, Tampa Palms, Land O'Lakes. If you go east, Brandon, Valrito, Riverview. Nothing really south, like directly south, because you get McDill Air Force Base, you hop into the bay there, and you have like Davis Island in that area, but not meaningful in the new construction world. And then Naples, Fort Myers, it's, you get the same kind of conversation, right? The pattern here, but that one's like more of like, what do you like? The heart of Naples is very far south. There's a little area southeast that would be meaningful, but most of this is going like directly north of Naples, like North Naples, Bonita Springs, Estero. This is actually an area where a circle where you maybe can find a lot more new construction. It's closer to the water because of the geography, but that's where I would start. And then you want to pick the major one, and that's your kickoff point. So you want to pick the one that looks like it does online. Lakewood Ranch to Sarasota, Wesley Chapel to Tampa. And that's where you want to start, because that's the best place to learn as much as possible. And like, if you were coming into town and I was touring you, this would be where you spend the first 4 hours. Everything else is a domino. It all makes way more sense. But if you did the wrong order, it might be a fun trip to Florida, but when you leave, I don't think you could answer a lot of the questions that are going to pop up later. So with that being said, Lakewood Ranch, if we just pull that out as the example for simplicity's sake, we're going to kill 40 birds, one stone with this idea. It's going to feel like a little bit of a blur, but it's like I still tell people that based on what we do today, any question for the most part that you're going to have for me after this day, after these 4 or 5 hours, I can answer all throughout Southwest Florida, because everything we're going to see today is an example of something else that's happening elsewhere or has already happened. And that's the kind of cool thing, and that's why we're starting here. But we're going to do even more than that. Very intricate, like the builders we see, using new construction builders as a talking head. The way we drive, the route, it's going to give you driving distances to the town, the suburb, within the suburb, everything in between. And then the thing you do the next day, now you're just bumping. It's apples to oranges situation. So in Lakewood Ranch, I would start in the part that's the closest to town. You want the best of the suburb and the closest to the town because of the sensitivity, and then you want to work your way from there, right? So this would be like lower water side. Find a neighborhood that's 9.5 to 10 miles one way to downtown Sarasota, because then it's going to give you that part of everybody kind of craps on that, it's far from town. It's going to solve that. Plus you have downtown, you have the best of the suburb and the best of, and not that far from town. Find a builder that's mid-level, like a Neal, Taylor Morrison, a Pulte. They've built a lot of good floor plans at 52 to 62 foot wide front planes. This might be overkill if you're not deep in your search right now, but they give you good examples of questions to ask later. If you like this one model, I could tell you all the other builders that would have the one that you'd want to look at as well, including custom and the cheaper versions of these builders. And then you want to work your way up. So all of these suburbs are in quadrants, right? So what you need to solve is not only, what I would do too is I'd meet people in downtown Sarasota, or I'd have them stay at a hotel that's close to town where they're probably not going to live, but it's a fun place to stay, and let them drive out in their own car to the suburb and feel what the 22 minutes here that isn't 22 miles, does that feel like you thought it was going to feel or different? I can't answer that, and that's one of the best reasons to come in town is I can't solve these problems. I don't know how it feels to you, and it depends on who you are and where you're from and how you drive and where you're used to. So you drive from there to there, that's one stone. And then you get there, and then the same thing, you're working your way up, right? So we find another builder that's in the mid-level, potentially a resale if we need to, because the mid-level Lakewood Ranch is pretty built out. And we'd solve the kind of the area that was built first, because Lakewood Ranch, they built the middle first, and then they went north, and then they went south, which is unusual. But if you got to know all that information, because it's important for history and what's going to happen next. I know it's a speed round, but you get the point. And I worked my way up, and I would just keep doing the same thing. You know, I'd go central, and then I'd go northwest to the first quadrant they built after the original, which is by the high school. And I'd find another builder there, and then I'd go east of that, and that'd be the second version of it. And I'd circle my way back down, and I would see the downtown, the lifestyle, the neighbor, and all of that took 4 to 5 total neighborhoods, maybe 1 to 2 total home models within them. So impactful. Second thing I do on day 2 is I'd either independently or with us, I would shoot down to Venice, and and this would be the same conversation for any area you went to. Just find the biggest divide, right? Lakewood Ranch to Venice is the biggest idea that if you go to one and then the other, you know right away one's for me, one's not. It is binary. It is polarity. So because they're so different from each other and they're in very different parts of town, both of those areas, a lot of neighborhoods at the same distance to downtown Sarasota, 2 different areas, the same distance to the same place, but from each other, they're also 45 minutes. So it changes the geography completely, right? So once I know which one of those you like better on style, geography, everything, then I'm just already way smarter. And then day 3 is the random. Day 3 is the everything else. Hopefully you know enough to know where it's way more enjoyable at this point, because you're either circling back or you are driving home an idea that you think you want. But then you look at the one that the person that is not from the area, that hasn't visited 20 years to Florida, it would be very uncomfortable to do randomly, right? Central Sarasota is one that has way more value if you know a lot more about the area and you know what's going to happen, but it means nothing if you drive it randomly, because it's like 2 or 3 new construction neighborhoods around existing neighborhoods, right? But if I can explain to you what it means versus what you saw the first 2 days, then everything means more. So that's kind of how I would arrange it. And I know it sounds like a blur or whatever, but I did want to just kind of, at this point in the video, I feel like it would, might help someone. But I would do that anywhere, right? Because it's still, just think about the ideas that I did. I started in the popular area. I started rippling to the fringes, and then I found out which fringes were important and why, and who told me that, and who they were, and who said it, how biased they are versus not. Found the other ones I should compare. I looked at them, and then I decided for myself what I liked. And then I say, like, what else? So what else beyond that is the juniors. So what if you're like, okay, so beyond this, what else should I see? If I was going to hang out for 7 days, day 4, I would say, like, are the beaches in play? Like, do I want to look at the barrier islands or anything urban, or resales that are in areas that, like, so what's the resale version of what I saw? Why did you not show me any of these areas? Well, because there's no new construction there, or there's not a lot, right? So, like, what is the areas that were these suburbs 10 years ago? What are those, right? Like, that would be maybe something I'd look at. I'd maybe look at anomaly areas of, like, what's specialty in my range? Like, what's cool in my range? And then everything else, for the most part for people, it's the if I drive 5 more miles, what do I get? So what is Eastern Sarasota? What is North Fort? What is Englewood? What is Parrish? What is Lower Palmetto? In Tampa, what is Zephyr Hills to Wesley Chapel, Odessa, San Antonio? These areas that are, like, you're not going to really come across accidentally unless you're looking at, if you're in Dunedin, you find Newport Richey, and then you find, areas above it. Like, you find Tarpon Springs, then you find Newport Richey. Like, that should be the order you go in. So if you know all of that, as I rest this case, then if you're actually getting like really creative, you can not only compare the plan B of a town to the plan A, like the parish to the Lakewood Ranch or the Lakewood Ranch versus the downtown Sarasota. But you can also, if you did all of this with Tampa versus Naples or Tampa versus Sarasota, then you can compare the plan A of one town to the A of the other town, plan B of one town to the B of the other town. And this becomes interesting. I have not seen a lot of cases, asterisks here, that people have chosen a metro based on like just pure affordability or something like that. They're gonna live where they want to live, and they're gonna find a way to satiate that need. They're not gonna just go to Tampa because of that. However, what you'll find in a lot of these metros is the plan B and C in the more expensive metro will be more expensive than the plan A in a different metro. For instance, like what Wesley Chapel or Tampa Palms pricing is versus like the junior versions of the Sarasota. So Wesley Chapel and Tampa Palms are Tampa metros, right, to the north. But if you look at Lakewood Ranch versus Wesley Chapel, those are A versus A. Big difference. And if you look at like what parish is, which is the B of Sarasota, versus the Wesley Chapel, it's probably pretty compelling. And then bringing this all home, there's an overkill here for sure, but bringing this all home is, if you can look at how they're structured, take the builders, and this is the killing 20 birds, one stone thing that I mentioned earlier, right? Look at the builders as the way they price themselves against themselves in different areas. Look at the same builder that has two different communities in Lakewood Ranch versus Parish. Look at the pricing and look at the kind of models, the orientation, the amenities, the HOA, the CDD. They position these things for you. But then also take that and view it to Tampa, view it to Naples. These guys have a lot of information. And at the very least, even if you're not really comparing these huge geographies, let the builder hyper-educate you on what they price their own homes against their own homes in different areas. It's a really fantastic way to learn. I'm going to let this one die. If you stick around for just a minute, I want to hit point number 4, which is just going to be like a little bit of discussion about migration states, so what people are choosing, in my opinion, as of late, and we will wrap it up. All right, my final point for this video, I would just like to briefly touch on the behavior trends I've been seeing when it comes to state-by-state net migration. And I would say unanimously in the past, the Texas versus Florida thing, like an apt comparison over and over and over. The people I talked to, how I thought about it on paper, you have a lot of similarities with the financial incentives due to state income tax, the new construction or the new business incentives were advantageous. You had pockets of political environment similarities and climate mirror markets, but the last year or so, the deeper I've gotten into this conversation and navigated it and all this kind of stuff, that blew up that idea for me. If you love parts of Florida and you're really honed in on, it doesn't matter what it is, big cities, Northeast, like the Jacksonville area, the Panhandle, Miami, Southwest Florida, we've been talking about inland Orlando, any of that kind of thing, and you really were in there and you were comparing, and I've talked to a lot of people that are actually doing this, and you're comparing those versions of Texas. I don't think they're anywhere even on the same map. No pun intended, but I don't think they're anywhere similar to each other. If you love the suburbs of Florida, like new construction suburbs, probably the hottest area in Texas right now is north of Dallas. It's like Plano, Frisco, Prosper, that kind of area. Well, one that's it's so inland. There's a million of them. So the value isn't as simple as Florida, because why people pick them versus each other isn't just be 10 miles of the coast versus 15. It's school districts, and it's all logistics, right? There's not really any big divide. So it also makes all the houses not as valuable versus each other to me, because they're all eye of the beholder, which isn't my favorite. I like old school real estate values. It's almost in Oklahoma, so the weather's kind of weird, but it's also nowhere near the water. Austin, Texas, if you love if you're looking at Tampa, Miami, Jacksonville, Orlando, which are the major cities of Florida, I don't know, you're not doing Dallas, Austin, or Houston instead of it. If you're and the big cities in Florida beyond Orlando, the attraction is they're coastal. They're even Miami's large, but it's water. Look at the water. And Austin's nowhere near the water. And then Houston, as a last example, if you said that's your coastal play, you're going to do the beaches in Houston. What if you saw the beaches in Florida? If you like the beaches in Houston, it's probably because there versus you not being near beaches. But if you like the beaches in Florida, like that's not a comparison. But also, Houston's massive. Like if you're over there if you're close enough to have like actual day-to-day beach life in Houston, then you can be an hour plus from both the suburbs and the major towns that you'd want to be close to. So it's just, I don't even think it's a decision, really. What I have been seeing it move to more, it's not a new thing, but it's been moving to more and more and more, is the ins and outs of Florida, especially to the Carolinas, which has been interesting. I've spent a lot of time in like Raleigh, Asheville. I love Greenville, South Carolina is really cool. Charleston, Wilmington, and then even like Savannah, Georgia, Tybee Island, that kind of area. I've seen a big push there. One, like the bigger push I've been seeing, like the trend wise, is like people leaving the state of Florida to go there that maybe came here or were already here and they don't like kind of like where it's going. And there's affordability and there's some things there. But the one thing I've been evolving thought a little bit more as I've gone is kind of like Florida being the last stop. If you agree that Texas isn't in play, like as an apples to apples, and you said Florida is the last stop south, whether you're moving up from the Northeast down or you're moving more in recent history, we've seen a lot of like California, Washington State, people that went to Arizona, didn't like it from California, they're going further down to Florida. Well, if you go to Florida, you know what you're getting. It's good or bad. It is what it is. Where you're working with climate-wise, risk-wise, with like hurricanes, you know what it is, right? It's pretty even to get your head around. Well, if you're from a state that has seasons that is different weather than Florida, which most are, then maybe that's too big of a jump. So I'm almost seeing like Florida as the last landing spot and Georgia and the Carolinas at the stop before, maybe the final stop, but at least the stop before. Because what it's going to give you, it's going to give you a little bit more of what you're used to, but still most of what you're seeking. It's going to give you that coastal retirement lifestyle, the more peace of mind, the less cluster that is with the minutia of a work commute and the city life. And like a lot of the folks that come to our area they want to escape, they're escaping things. Maybe they're escaping politics, they're escaping the state they're in for different reasons. And it could just be like they're tired of those winters. But maybe they don't want to go all the way to 360 days of sunshine either, in a melting pot of all being around just people removed from there from. So anyway, I've just something I've been thinking through. It's an interesting thing to keep an eye on. It's an interesting thing if when you got to Florida, it's not quite what you want. I think there's a happy medium in between. And I think there's always good for a buyer to have 3 or 4 choices of areas. It just makes you smarter in the choice you actually choose, whether that is one neighborhood or that is the states that you can choose from. So I just wanted to mention that point. And give me just a minute, and I have some fun, free stuff for you on the outro, and we'll finish off. All right, that is a wrap for episode number 5 of Florida Relocation Weekly. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel before you head out. And a couple other housekeeping items real quick. If you have not done that 30-day report I mentioned at the beginning, 1 email every 30 days, the best of what we're offering, bite-sized, really consumable fashion. Link is in the description box below. Check that out. Really easy sign up. Beyond that, we have also consolidated all of our separate PDF relocation guides, like flip books, that give you insight about an area, what it means, restaurants, neighborhoods, things like that. We've shoved them all into one Southwest Florida guide. It's a really easy flip book. You don't have to leave your browser on your computer, or you can download it. That is in the link right next to that other link, sign up. And then I also mentioned at the beginning, I own a full-scale real estate brokerage called the Sunshine State Company. It serves the whole state of Florida, and it's a residential real estate brokerage, buying, selling, investing. It's not just innate to YouTube. It's not just innate to buying only. But what we do focus on heavily is relocation and new construction. So Tampa Bay, greater area, all 3 counties in Tampa Bay, Sarasota, Manatee, and beyond, and also Fort Myers, Naples. That's really our area of focus. And I think we have one of the best abilities to separate them from each other. So if you pick this spot on a map, the entire circle, it's like 7, 8 total counties. Then we have expertise in basically dividing them from amongst each other, which I think is a little tricky. And relocation is not a random purchase, We're very empathetic to the logistics that it involves and what that entails and the liquidity and the balance of buying and selling. So if that is if you're in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Ohio, Canada, California, Washington State, Arizona, Nevada, these are areas that heavily migrate down to the state of Florida. that is our area of expertise, and we're really economic focused. So we do more new construction volume, I could say unequivocally, than anyone around. And that a lot relates to the relocation because of the logistics ease in relocating with new construction. So because of that, we have a lot of leverage when it comes to new home incentives, quick move-ins. We find out things first. We just do more activity in these areas, and we know more about them because of that. In the most humble way I can possibly say, it's just an advantage that we can provide to the next person because of what we've done over the last 4 years. So I don't say that stuff enough. I just wanted to mention it if you're unfamiliar with our organization, or you think that I'm just like a YouTuber and it's not real estate related. Like, it really is. The Florida Relocation Guide is an asset that I created in order to try to inform people, whether they use this or not, the most information as possible, which just makes our relationship, if you do choose to use us to buy real estate, a lot more useful and efficient. So I wanted to mention that. Again, my name is Adam Hancock. Even if you never call us, I really appreciate you guys taking any time. I get your time is valuable, and I speak in long form. So I really appreciate you guys taking time to watch my content, and we'll see you on the next episode.